a 1968 Shakespeare-inspired spaghetti western called Johnny Hamlet? Sign me up! In this Italian western film, Johnny Hamilton is returning home from the Civil War only to find that his father has been murdered and his mother has married his father's brother, old Uncle Claude. This rather highbrow Western idea was originally developed by Sergio Corbucci, but it ended up being directed by Enzo Castellari. Now, there's no reason why a Shakespearean story couldn't work in the West, especially a story like Hamlet. I mean, murder, revenge, evil henchmen, dueling, it's all there. And historically speaking, people in the Wild West knew who Shakespeare was. Shakespeare was performed quite often in the American West, the most popular plays being Hamlet and Richard III. Johnny Hamlet opens with a nod to its source material, with an actor reciting the words to be or not to be, so on and so forth. This guy's part of an acting troupe that Johnny has taken up with on his way home from the war. Now, of course, Shakespeare's play famously features an acting troupe that comes in and plays a very important role in the plot. The acting troupe in this movie also plays a role in the plot, although it's a little bit different from Shakespeare, but they do move the plot forward with an important clue about Hamlet's father's murderer. Now let's get character names out of the way. So we've got Johnny Hamilton, standing in for Hamlet, of course. And where is Johnny Hamlet going home to, other than El Señor Ranch? That's right, folks. Do you get it? El Señor? Elsinore? Good, right? And then for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, we have the henchmen Ross and Gild. And of course, Claudius becomes Claude. That's easy enough. Also, Horatio is called Horace and is played by the fantastic Gilbert Roland. Now, I did not actually know about Gilbert Roland, even though I'm a huge old movie fan, but he is just a gem in this movie, seriously. Every time that Johnny gets into a jam, Horace just pops up out of nowhere and saves his booty, and it is just fantastic to watch. Really, we can all aspire to have a friend as wonderful as Gilbert Roland in this movie. And then my second favorite thing, and the thing that everybody seems to really love about this movie, is the cemetery in a cave. Now, this is a really cool set piece, and it's well worth the price of admission. It just looks really awesome. It's this kind of dark, gothically Western location. There's candles burning everywhere, and it's a cemetery in a cave. I mean, that's a cool idea. And speaking of the cave, the movie is notable for featuring the striking rock formations of Ciudad Encantada in Spain. Now, as far as Shakespeare goes, one of the big differences between the play and the movie is that in the play, obviously, there's the supernatural event of Hamlet meeting his father's ghost, and he really needs to go through in his mind, is this his father's ghost? Is this some kind of demonic spirit? Should I listen to it? Should I not listen to it? Is it trustworthy? And there's all this deliberation going on in his mind, which of course is why the play takes so long. And that's a little bit different the way it's played out in this movie, which, by the way, is really doing its own thing. It is a spaghetti western. It's a different genre. It's following the story as well as it wants to, but it's basically doing its own thing. And something that it does with that is it places the focus more on who did the murder, essentially. So Johnny comes home, he's not quite sure who it is. He's got his suspicions about his uncle, who's played by Horst Frank and is a great sinisterly blonde-haired villain. They say that this Mexican bandit named Santana did the murder, but Horace and Johnny, are not too sure whether it's Santana. So that's mainly where the deliberation is coming from, is who actually did it. It's not quite so much on the supernatural aspect. He has a dream of his father, which is how he knows that his father is dead, but he doesn't have this supernatural meeting with his father's ghost like in the Shakespeare play. Another big difference, and this is the part of the movie that I didn't like so much, is that I thought the character Ophelia was just very underutilized. And again, it's a different genre. I totally get that. I totally get that they're doing their own thing with the story. That's fine. They can change around plot points. They can change characters, whatever they want. But I felt like they could have done a lot more with Ophelia than what they did. I was a little bit disappointed about that. I mean, if I were the actress reading the script, I would have been like, oh, is this my whole part? Okay, well, that's disappointing. And I'm not going to give spoilers just in case you do want to see this movie someday. So I won't give spoilers as to how she dies and all of that, but it's not like in the Shakespeare play. They just kind of reduced her down to a plot point and not much else, which is a shame if you're a fan of Ophelia, because she's a cool character. Now, one of the other big differences between the play and the movie is the ending. And again, I'm not going to give spoilers just in case you do want to go out and see it. But the ending has some very heavy-handed Catholic imagery of Jesus on the cross and Mary, being Johnny Hamlet and his mother Gertrude, because Johnny ends up getting crucified. And again, if you watch the movie, I won't tell you exactly what happens, but you'll see the outcome of that. The outcome is definitely more akin to the theological reference than it is to the Shakespearean reference, and that's all I'll say about that. But it's a fine ending for the Western. I think it worked. Again, it's quite heavy-handed, and you're kind of like, oh wow, oh my gosh, it's a crucifixion. So it's a little bit out of left field, how kind of dark it is. But it certainly packs a punch, so it keeps you watching for sure. So one more thing about the ending. So there's a plot in the movie that centers around the villain stealing a bunch of gold because, you know, it's a Western. And in the end, when the villain dies, there's this visually poetic shot of the gold dust being swept away with the wind. And going off of that, just in general, I thought the direction was very good. There's some very impressive camera angles and tracking shots. One tracking shot in particular in the cemetery going around Andrea Giordana as Johnny. There's some good shootout scenes and fist fight scenes. So very action-packed Western. Hamlet in this movie is very much a man of action, much more so than in the Shakespeare play. And we love that. It's a Western movie, so go for it, Hamlet. Shoot 'em up. Now, I am by no means a spaghetti Western connoisseur, so maybe you can't take my word for it, but I thought it was a pretty fun movie. For nothing else, I definitely recommend it for the cave cemetery scene and for the charming Gilbert Roland that I thoroughly enjoyed in this film. And with that, anon.